Hello. In this video, we'll be going through the layout of the ForMAPL Shiny app and uploading your own data into the app. In the last videos, we talked about how you can download RStudio and install the ForMAPL Shiny app in R package. So please make sure you've gone and installed the ForMAPL package. And once that's done, please see this video on the layout of the app and how you can get your data uploaded. So before we do that, we have a couple of things we need to discuss. We need to reiterate from the previous video the type of data structure you need in order to be able to use the ForMAPL app. So this app uses what's known as tidy data. So each observation, or a tree, is a single row in your data sheet, and each column is a variable that describes that tree. So ForMAPL uses plot data. So what this means is that on each plot, each row will be an individual tree. So here we can see on this plot number 1 in Maine, for example, with these coordinates, it has a tree of balsam fir with attributes as the columns, such as diameter, its expansion factor, and its basal area per acre, the year it was measured. So on this plot, we see we have each row is a tree, so a balsam fir, a red spruce, a sugar maple, a yellow birch, and an American beech. So again, each tree is a row, and each column is a variable about that tree. And all of the data is stored as individual plots. So we have a plot ID that describes what physical location on Earth we're measuring or sampling our data on, as well as its location, and basic attributes such as the species, the year measured, the diameter of the tree, and the expansion factors. And so again, the only required variables you need to run ForMAPL app are, again, tidy data with plot data. So your data can either be fixed area sampling, so you know the expansion factor, either in acre, hectare values, or whatever units you desire, as well as variable area such as point sampling with a crucial, an angle gauge, or a prism. And so you need to know the expansion factor for your data, whether it's fixed area or the basal area factor if you're using variable area sampling. You also need the plot ID. So you need a combination of unique identifiers. So let's say you have plot 1 from multiple states. So you can identify that as plot 1 from Michigan, plot 1 from Maine, and use each of those columns as a key to create a unique identifier for a plot location. Or you can keep it simple and just have one column as your plot ID. However you want to do this, make sure that you have a combination or a single value that allows you to uniquely identify a plot in your data. We also need the plot coordinates with that plot ID. This can be in any coordinate reference system, lat, long, UTM, whatever you would like to use. And we also need a tree species. So for each plot measurements, you need the species of the tree and its diameter. So as long as you have all these minimum things, you can use the ForMAPL app. And because this project is partially sponsored and funded by the U.S. Forest Service, we will be using FIA plot data and U.S. Forest Service stand boundaries as examples for plot data as well as geometry data in the form of a shapefile. And so for the FIA data, all we did was download the latest data set from the data mart for a couple of states, which you can find in the link here. All we did was just take the plot IDs, the location, the year, the tree species, and the diameter, and the expansion factor, exactly as we described here. We extracted those values and formatted our data in a tidy way. And we also just downloaded the U.S. Forest Service shape file, the stand boundary shape file from this link. So that's the data we'll be using in this example. So if you'd like to follow along, you can go ahead and download FIA data and the stand boundary shape file as well. Okay, so that's background on what ForMAPL needs to be able to run. Now we can go ahead and actually launch the app. So we can either launch RStudio. I'm going to be using RStudio here, but the process is exactly the same for R. So I'm going to go here and browse for my apps in Windows. We can go to All. We can find RStudio or R, whichever one you want to use, and you can click on it. And here we're prompted with the console here, our little blinking cursor. First, we need to load the ForMAPL library, which we installed in the previous videos. We can simply type in library for Maple. Go ahead and press Press enter. This will load the library. And now all we have to do to launch the app is type run app, parentheses, and press enter. This will load the Shiny app, and it will open in a new browser window, like so. So I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen so we can see it a little bit better, and maybe increase the size just a tiny bit. Okay, so let's go over the layout of the app. So on the top here, we have what we call a tab layout. So each tab is shown here on the top. So we have a tab for importing your data, for filtering your data set, for visualizing the map or the plot locations of your data as well as its geometry, and for creating graphs or plots, just standard distributions, basal area distributions, and basal area percentage graphs. And finally, we can export our data with the Export tab into a format ready to be used by the app in the future. So let's kind of go over how the app works. So when you import your data, the app will format it in the way that the app ForMAPL can use, in the tidy format like we talked about before. And so you can think of this as a kind of a conveyor belt. So when you import your data, this gets sent to the Filter tab. So anything you do in the Filter tab will get sent to the Map tab. Anything you do in the Plot tab will be the final step. So you can think you can import your data, you can refine it with the filtering step, you can visualize it with the mapping, and then you can make individual plots with the plotting. And finally, you can save the entire data set again for use further down the line. Think of it as the data flows from left to right. You can refine it or not refine it as much as you want to get to those plots to help visualize your data, either as a map, as a spatial map, or as individual graphics as plots. Okay, so with that down, let's go ahead and start with importing and loading our own data sets into ForMAPL. So when you start here with the Import tab, the first thing you're going to see is a couple of subtabs. So this basically helps us import our data in the correct way. So the first subtab in the Import tab is importing our plot data. So we can see here there's little icons that tell us what to do. So the first step is, of course, to click this Browse button here to locate our data set. Right now we support RDS, which is the R data format, and CSV data. So we can go here to Browse, and I have my data set already downloaded called data.csv. So we can go ahead and click this, click Open. So we'll go ahead and load the data into ForMAPL. We can see upload is complete, and then it displays a preview, the first 15 rows of our data with their columns. And so here we have our basic attributes, our plot ID, our measured year, our coordinates, our species, our diameter column, and our expansion factor for our fixed area plots. And notice I also have a couple of columns here that aren't strictly required. These are state codes, forest types, and forest names. And so the cool thing about the ForMAPL app is that we can, of course, have the required columns to be able to run the app. The app will also allow us to use any additional columns in our data. So anything else we want to attach to our data, we can attach those in our CSV when we upload it. So this is really cool because you can have any sort of complex information, forest type, any sort of metric you want, variable you want, you can attach to your data, and the app will be able to use it. But again, these first columns here are the core columns, such as the plot, the year, location, species, diameter, and expansion factor. So as long as you have those, you can run the app, and you can also attach any additional columns. Okay, so we can verify that our data is imported, and it looks the way we expect it to look. Now we can go ahead and go into the next tab, which is actually setting up the sampling design for our data. So we come here to the sampling design tab. We can see it's divided into 3 sections. So first we have our inputs, our values, and our single values. So starting off with the inputs, the first thing we need to tell ForMAPL is what type of units did you sample in? Did you use imperial, which would be inches, feet, and acres, or metric, which is centimeters, meters, and hectares? So for the FIA data, It's of course in imperial units, so we can go ahead and select imperial. And our sampling design is fixed area. These are circular plots. And so when you click on fixed area, it will tell you, okay, you have a fixed area plot. You need to either provide the expansion factor, a known plot area, a known plot radius, or a plot fraction, such as 1/10 of an acre or hectare, for example. If for some reason you don't have that as a column in your data set, but you know the value, you can enter it as what we call a single value. So to kind of explain this here, for our sampling design, we can go ahead and we can pick a expansion factor, since this is inside of our data. So we have a column called expansion factor to expand it out to an acre. So we can click on this. This is our expansion factor. Again, if you have a plot area that you know, such as in square feet, a plot radius, a fixed radius circular plot, and it's the same for all your plots, or you have a column or a plot fraction, you can go ahead and enter those. Or if for some reason you don't have a column, but you have a single value, and you know that each tree is worth 10 trees per acre, you could go ahead and enter that in the single value. And so if you try to enter multiple values, it'll tell you too many selections. You can either have an expansion factor, plot area, radius, or fraction as a column, or as a single value. So since I have multiple plots, and I have a column that explains my expansion factor, I will just choose that value here. Okay, so the next thing we need to select is the diameter column. So in my data, I have a column called diameter inches. I'll choose that as my diameter. And the next thing is our year column. So I have a column called year in my data. I will choose that, so there's year. If for some reason you don't have a year that describes the time your plot was measured, you can enter a single value in here, such as, let's say, 2025. And so again, similar to the expansion factors, you can only select one measurement either as a column or as a single value. So mine is a column, so I'll choose year again. So now I have my sampling units, my sampling design, my diameter, my year, my expansion factor. Now I can go ahead and press Format Sampling Design. This will go ahead and format our data and bring us into the next tab that allows us to fine-tune our plot data. So now we have two things here, plot ID and tree attributes. So for our plot IDs, this is again giving us those core columns that tell us where our plot is located. So the first thing is the plot keys. If you have multiple ways to describe a physical plot location, so if you use SQL databases, any sort of database management, you know what a key is. And so it's a unique combination of columns that describes a physical plot. So in my case, I just have one key, it's plot ID. So I'll choose that. And again, my plot ID is just plot ID, so I will go ahead and choose that. Now go ahead and enter your coordinates. Mine are not that long, so for my X coordinate, I have longitude. And then my Y coordinate is latitude. My EPSG coordinate system is 4326 for that long. That's the plot ID information. Then we have the tree attributes. We need to choose the species. So here I have the species column. And the rest of this automatically gets formatted when you import your data and format the sampling design. So I have my diameter column, trees per unit area, basal area per unit area, and year, which are automatically calculated and converted to the right format by the app. Excuse me a second, my little kid wants to say hi. Say hello. Hello. So now we're going to continue on here. In this last column, our last little card we see has format options. And so if you brought your data in to the ForMAPL app before and exported it with the export tab up here, you don't have to go through this process again. You can simply export your data. When you import it, all you have to do is click on this button called Data Formatted, and you don't have to go through the process of choosing your sampling design or formatting your plot data. But since we're doing this for the first time, we need to make sure everything's set up correctly. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and press Format Data. Ooh, I'm sorry, my cat just stepped on my keyboard. So we'll press Format Data, and our data is formatted. So that's pretty much all there is to formatting your data. Again, you bring it in, You tell it the sampling design, you format it, choose the correct columns for your plot IDs and tree attributes, and you're good to go. Now, a couple of optional things here in the Import tab. The first one is what we call FIA species codes. So if for some reason you want to convert your species codes to the FIA standard, you can go ahead and do that in this tab. So what this does is that for every unique species that you have, you can go ahead and select a FIA species code from this list. So I'd like to force this point home. This is completely optional. You do not have to do this. This is merely a way to convert whatever code system you're using into the FIA standard, and it is not required for the app to run or for any of its functions or features. Okay, so I will not be converting to the FIA species codes because I'm just using the scientific name. There's no reason for me to do this, but if you would like to, again, this is optional. So you can just go ahead, say for balsam fir, you can click on the FIA code, find balsam fir, and go through this list for all of your individual species until they're converted to the FIA codes. When you're done, you can press this button, Convert Species Code, and it will succeed if you've chosen them all, and if not, it'll say X amount of species, in this case 96, still have to be assigned. Please assign one to each of your species. So you can just go down the list and assign the codes as such. Again, this is optional. I will not be doing this, but you can if you would like to. And finally, we have the import geometry. So if you have any polygons that you would like to use and take those attributes and apply it to your data set and also visualize the polygons, you can go ahead and do this here as well. And so similar to importing data, we can import things like shapefiles, GeoJSONs, etc. Just note that the shapefiles must be a zip file, so you can't upload the individual components of the shapefile. It has to be just a single file. So we can go ahead and click Browse. And again, for this example data, I'm using the forest surface boundaries that we talked about in the intro. So I'll go ahead and click that. What it's going to do is import your shapefiles. It's going to apply the attributes from the data to your points, as well as create a fast and efficient way to visualize your polygons in real time. Oh, Katie says hi again. Hello, Katie. Say hi to the camera. Hello. And so here we can see our data is imported, and we have our Forest Service information, such as the region, forest number, forest name, etc., and its size in acres. Sorry, forgive the kitty. And so that is all there is to importing the data. And so now that we have our data imported, just to check and make sure that it's here, we go to our Map tab. We should see our data here in real time. Here we can see all of our shapefiles for the Forest Service boundaries. As we zoom in here, all of our FIA plots for our areas of interest. And there's the polygons and the points overlaid on top of each other. So that's going to wrap up this video. We talked about the data formats we need, launching the app, overall layout, and importing your data, your plot data, and your geometry into the app for analysis. So I'm going to end this here, but in the next video we will go over filtering and mapping your data.